How do you make a fence that doesn't get blown apart by a couple of light storms? That is something that was quite on our minds. As you've seen in the last video, our fence was just made up of fence panels and wooden posts, and the way they were put together over time meant that they fell apart. Now, some of these fence panels have been up for probably 15 years. They were here when we moved in. Casper, out! God, Casper's taken full advantage of the fence situation. Out, out! Good boy. But some of the other panels we had put up, like literally like 4 years ago, completely blown out. We spent a lot of money on having those installed. It is a tricky situation because the wind where we live, it's kind of angled so that the wind goes straight across the garden. It takes the full force on those fence panels. They turn into like big sailing ship sails and just catch the air. And then the posts pivot and swing backwards and forwards over time. In some cases 10, 15 years, in others 4 years. And as you'd imagine, we're pretty sick of having to pay for these panels to be put up every time. It can't take one more storm. As I mentioned in the last video, the only 3 panels that have stood the test of time were the ones that were re-put up, refitted by my brother-in-law. You can see them in the background there. They were falling down and now they are absolutely rock solid because of the way that he set them into the ground in concrete. So when it came to dealing with the fence situation, there was only one person we could reach out to. My brilliant brother-in-law, Steve, has now built this. This is going to stand the test of time, and I've just wanted to share some of the techniques he uses to make sure this fence doesn't fall down after a few storms. I absolutely love how he's doing this. So basically, instead of having a 3-inch post like before, we've got a 4-inch square post. I don't use inches. The only time I use inches is when my brilliant brother-in-law comes and fixes our house. And then we've got 10 feet between each post, and underneath there's a gravel board to raise the feather edge fence panels from the ground. And then behind that we have 3 of these struts. He said it's a bit like, it is a bit like stud work, but this is absolutely rock solid, especially the way he's screwed it into both these homemade, I don't know what you'd call them, it's like a rest. So that's really solid, and he's put the beams into the rest and into the post as well. So instead of the storm hitting the fence panel and just blowing the panel in, the wind will have to kind of take this, and this will take the full force of the wind that comes across the garden and spreads the force onto the posts, instead of before having a panel that just kind of flips in and out, and then it kind of cantilevers or pivots the post backwards and forwards and just works them out of the ground even though they're in concrete. This is absolutely rock solid. You can climb on it. They're like monkey bars. Another ingenious feature is this down here. In between the gravel boards, I've got another example here. We've got an extra strut, not only to take the weight of the lower beam and to stop that flexing, but also to stop the gravel boards from warping over time. So I guess this board at the bottom also takes some load or some of the force so that the fence doesn't flex backwards and forwards with 50-mile-an-hour winds headed this way. The posts are about 9 feet apart, so we've got 10 feet that's being cut down to size. And also the other thing he had to contend with was years and years and years of other posts put into the ground. Obviously you can't put a post into the ground if there's a pile of concrete there, and instead of having to dig them out, they've been spaced so that they avoid the concrete that's in the ground already. And then the finishing touch, which I absolutely love, are these feather edge boards. Each one of these has been nailed individually. Whoa! Each one of these boards has been nailed individually, and he's even made like a jig, I don't know what you'd call it, but like a spacer to nail the boards to space them exactly so that over time they won't warp and, you know, just have big gaps in the fence. These hopefully are going to stay. The garden obviously isn't level, so it tapers down, but the feather edge boards kind of curve down. I don't know if you can see it on camera. They curve down to follow the drop in the garden all the way down to the bottom of the patio here. My son has been helping out, which has been absolutely fantastic, and they've been on such a roll because of my brilliant brother-in-law's system for getting these fences up. He's seen so many fences over time just blow out and fall apart, and every part of this design designs out some of the problems that he's seen from the fences that he's had to repair and replace over time. They've managed to do this over 2 days. We're on the final half day now, just to finish up to here. Again, I mean, we decided to go up to the fence posts that are absolutely staying the test of time. It just felt wrong to take out the only 3 fence panels that have stood up. I think we're going to go all the way later this year, so for now we've decided to just bring the fence up to here, and then the new design will just join onto this for now temporarily, and then in the spring we'll probably just get the final 2 sets of 10 feet out to the back of the garden. We've not wanted to go for concrete posts. I mentioned that on the last video. I'll show you the problem with the concrete posts. Firstly, they look like a municipal detention centre. I absolutely love, I mean, look at it. It's just fantastic. I love the fact that it's just wood against nature, even though that hasn't served us well over the last 10 years. It just looks great. It looks so much better than these things. And the thing with the concrete posts is that they do rot over time. They do, I haven't got an example here. The concrete posts aren't infallible either, because these do crumble and they start to fall apart anyway. So there's all that expense, and they're more expensive as well. And the fence panels still blow in, so you've still got to replace the panels over time. Look at that one. And it's really difficult to get to those ones because they're behind this tree. I think this tree is probably not going to make it through 2025, but this absolutely fills our garden, and it's just so big and inappropriate to have on the edge of the garden. It goes all over the neighbour's garden, and when it's in leaf it just blocks everything out. I think we're going to be really pleased to see this taken back, and I think we'll probably have to do that in the spring. My brilliant brother-in-law Steve and my son have been out. You can see how cold it is from the frost. It's a hard frost. It's the coldest day of the last year, even though we're into the new year. He had to dig out each one of these posts in rock solid frozen conditions. -5, it's -5 overnight. So you can imagine how much of a job it is to put in every single one of these posts. And the length of the garden is worth about 10 posts, each of which has to be dug individually, set into the ground with this stuff, postcrete, made level and true and facing into the right part of the garden. It's not finished yet, but I really like the little bits of post above the fence. I don't know why. You might have the brain that would want to have those removed, but I kind of like the little turrets at the top there. It kind of shows something of how substantial it is. And so we're on to the final straights now, just these final 2, I call them panels, these sections of beams now being clad in the feather edge boarding. They're being nailed in 6 places, and you can probably see my son holding like a jig or a spacer to make sure that the incoming feather edge board is the exact same distance on every panel on board that's being nailed to the beams. And it's really cold work. They've got to get this done before a snowstorm moves in this afternoon, which is why they've somehow managed to start so early on the Saturday morning. They're just working their way down the garden, overlapping as they go. I hadn't realised how much bigger this proper fence now makes the garden look, because before the wobbly, rickety panels were just all over the place. And I think our focus is drawn to them. Now the nice, clean, tidy fence is up, you really notice what's going on in the gardens. We can really make the most of that. When the spring comes, then we'll be able to plant beds or even push grass all the way up to the fence now. And we've already decided that we're going to continue the fence in probably spring, Easter. We will continue the fence that we've got and move it all the way up to the end of the garden, past the happy hearts. But oh my goodness, look, it's done. Look at it. It looks absolutely magnificent. We could not be happier about this, partly because it's straight and it's standing, but also because we know the woodwork behind it will take the full force of a 50-mile-an-hour wind heading straight for it. I am calling this a Dad Delivers success. I hope something here might help or inspire you for your garden fencing, and thank you for hitting the thumbs up or the subscribe button. It really helps me to keep this channel going, so thank you. And right here is what YouTube knows you want to be watching next.